So I always wanted to be cool. More than wanting to be the strongest or the richest or the best fighter or, whatever those kinds of ideas are. I always wanted to be cool. My heroes were more like Fonzie, let's say. The really current reference. I didn't want to be Luke Skywalker, too much struggle, too much fighting. I wanted to be Obi-Wan Kenobi, even though he doesn't make it past the end of Act 2. Spoilers. I wanted to be James Bond, Stuff happens all the time. Bad things happen, but you just deal with it. I wanted to be cool, like the people you see in a breath mint commercial. I wanted to be cool. Just handling stuff, And because I wanted to be cool, it's obvious why I chose to become, a minister. It doesn't get much cooler than that as a gig. It's a funny thing because the leaders, the gurus, the beginners, the originators, the first people in any particular religious, spiritual tradition tend to be pretty cool. But the organizations that come after them tend to not be very cool. Have you noticed that? Yeah. The Buddha, probably pretty cool. But when I think about a bunch of people going to a Buddhist retreat with their special yoga mats and very expensive pants, and all the same bumper stickers on all the same bumpers and all the same cars, there's a lot of wonderful things about that, but cool's not one of the words that comes to mind. Jesus, probably pretty cool. But Christianity is so uncool that you can put the word Christian in front of something and immediately take all the cool out of it. We're going to a rock show. Yay! It's a Christian rock show. Oh no! You want to see a Christian stand-up comic? No. Because one thing it's not going to be is funny, and another thing it's not going to be is cool. And so the question becomes, what happened in that journey from being cool and being able to handle stuff and just being able to accept all kinds of difference, all kinds of diversity, all kinds of challenge, knowing something versus trying so darn hard? What happens in that journey? I'm not the first person to notice that most religion, from something you would see in a tribal context, very, very primal sort of a thing, into something very, very official with a lot of buildings and a lot of organizations and everything else. Most religious expression, most ritual, for example, has to do with protecting from in-betweenness. They call it liminal space in the religious studies department of your local university. Liminal space, the place between things. And you've seen that when you go from outside a holy place into a holy place. So sometimes there's holy water to protect you from that in-betweenness, that liminal space. Sometimes there's a scroll, a mezuzah on the door to recognize that space. A lot of times that a religious ceremony takes place to protect you. You weren't married, now you're married. We got to have a ceremony to protect you from that in-between space. A lot of ritual is designed to protect you from that transition in between. Even things like singing happy birthday come from that. Well, you were this age and now you're this age. We got to protect you from that time when you don't know. That's where it comes from. Not a lot of people know that, but that is at the essence of a lot of ritual. And it's important and it's understandable. I get it, but it's not cool. It's not cool. Cool is being able to handle the transitions. You ever been on a first date and the date is over and it went well and they like you and you like them and you're talking and everybody knows that it's time for that first kiss thing and I can't get is it okay? Not cool. The transition. I'm a minister, so I go to a lot of weddings, and one of the things that I see a lot is the dread that fills people's faces when we get to the reception and there's that dance floor in the middle of the room. And that moment when the average person who does not dance very often goes from walking across the floor onto the floor, oh, now I'm dancing. That terrible moment of transition is not cool. It's not cool. Some people just don't dance. That's a valid response, I suppose. I just don't do it. I don't go there. It's not who I am. Some people might even say that, well, that's evil. But now I'm going to get into the whole plot of Footloose, and we don't have time. But it's a valid response. They just sort of cancel that part out of your life. But if you miss dancing, you miss a lot of things, Metaphorically, you miss almost everything important, Some people have the opposite response. They say, well, I don't really see the boundary between just walking and dancing. It's all the same to me. And you see those people because they just kind of walk across the dance floor. Or they're sitting in their seats, but they're kind of moving a little bit. But you and I both know that walking and dancing are not the same thing. And if you think they're the same thing, you're not good at walking and you're not good at dancing. Maybe you see where I'm going with this. Because here's the thing, my friends. Different things happen. We are constantly in the verge of some kind of a transition from one state of being to another state of being. It's okay that there's diversity. It's okay that there are things different than what we expect. That's how we grow, and that's what makes us cool. So it's important to embrace the difference if we're going to grow. That's how all of this works. And it's something that we've had a lot of practice with. I grew up in New Thought. And so I grew up not believing, for example, in hell, and not believing, for example, in the concept of the devil. Didn't come up for me. Wasn't scary to me. I didn't get it. I just didn't grow up with it. It's my background. But what I did grow up with was a lot of other kids in school thinking for sure I was going to hell and going to meet the devil. There's this one kid, Billy Dixon, who later set fire to the boys' bathroom. Fun story. But Billy was very concerned because Billy was an evangelical. And Billy said, what do you mean you don't believe in the devil? How do you deal with it? Don't you need to have bad in order to have good? Do you need to bang your head up against a wall to know that it feels good to not bang your head up against a wall? I've done that, metaphorically. Don't recommend it. Do you really need the bad in order to experience the good? Let me put that another way. Do you need some metaphysical cubbyhole to throw all of your negative stuff so that you don't have to deal with it? Because I've had lots of people tell me, because I say, well, we don't really have that concept of a bad place where you go. I've had lots of people say, well, then how is it that you could possibly be moral? You ever heard that one? Spend enough time on Facebook, you'll see that one. How is it possible to be moral if you don't have the fear of these eternal consequences? Or the promise of getting to go to the bonus round in the sky if you're really, really good? How can you be ethical? How can you be moral? And what I would say to that is what I have always said to that. If you're only being nice because there's a prize in it or a punishment in it, you're not actually being nice. You're just in it for yourself. That's not the same thing as moral. That's fear. That's not love. That's reward. That's not love. And that's a very different thing. But you know that because you're here, right? We do things a little bit differently around here. And yet, as much as we know that it's wonderful to not have a place you just dump all the bad stuff, because we know that growing means dealing with it, facing it, getting through it, because there's something in there to learn and grow through. We know all that. And yet I've heard lots of people in lots of progressive churches say something like, well, I was a jerk to you because Mercury is in retrograde. I said fire to your house because Mercury is in Gatorade right now, and that's just what happens. No. You don't get to do that. I'm sorry I was a jerk to you, but you see, that's my shadow self. No, you were a jerk. And as long as you have a place to put it, what it means is you're not dealing with it. So I'm going to be very, very clear about this. Sometimes bad things happen. I do think there are a lot of things that we need to fix in the world. I think that racism is terrible. I think that war is terrible. I think it's super weird that there are billion-dollar yachts and people living on the streets. These are things we need to deal with. But we don't get to deal with them if we just label them as something other and push them to the side and say that that's not part of my thing, because all I see is good. You can't clean up a mess if you don't see the mess, right? That's what we're talking about, because, my friends, we've got lots of cleaning up to do. So let me be very clear about this. If you're the kind of person who writes things down, this is a great thing to write down. Are you ready? All of you is accountable, because all of you is beautiful, because all of you is divine. All of you is accountable, because all of you is beautiful, because all of you is divine. You don't get to say that was my shadow self, or my inner child was throwing a fit and so I kicked you, or whatever. No, fix it. Everybody messes up sometimes because that's how we grow. So apologize. Make it better. When I was a kid, I was on my own a lot. My parents were doing their own thing. And so I got away with a lot. Ministers' kids are the worst. And so there weren't a lot of rules around my childhood, but one of the things that was really, really important was thou shalt clean thy room. Very important. I want to clean my room. Nobody wants to clean their room. And so one of the strategies I came up with that worked for a little while was just put everything in the closet. Nobody goes in there. My folks aren't really paying attention. Nobody's taking inventory. Just put it all in there. And it worked for a while until it didn't. And the closet door broke because it all came out again. It's not a valid method of dealing with the mess, and you know exactly what I mean. The other strategy for dealing with the mess is pretending like you like it that way. You ever try to pull that one on your parents? Oh no, this is my art. I like it this way. I don't see a mess. This is all intentional. It's all the same. Or the cousin of that, which is just act like you don't see it, which is really handy if you have a dog and you're supposed to clean up after the dog and you're 8 years old and you just, I didn't see that thing in the middle of the carpet. It doesn't get clean until you face it. And this is an important thing. I'm not just giving you hygiene and housekeeping tips. This is an important thing. Because very well-intentioned and well-meaning people sometimes say, I don't see the differences between myself and other people. Isn't that nice? Aren't I great? I don't see the differences. Well, you know what? The differences are important. Because one of the differences is that maybe someone's hurting and you could help. If you don't see it, you can't help. Can you imagine going to a doctor and saying, Doctor, I don't feel good, and the doctor saying, I don't see the differences between me and you, and I'm healthy as a horse. Great. I guess I'm done. The differences are instructional. The differences are healing. Genetically, you and I have more than 60% in common genetically with a banana. But the differences are important if you don't want to get kicked out of the grocery store for trying to make friends in the produce department. The differences are important because that's how we learn, that's how we help, that's how we grow. Here comes the tough one. I've heard very well-intentioned people say, all religions say the same thing. Well, you know they don't all say the same thing. You came here because there's something you can't hear anywhere else. You know not all religions say the same thing because there are some that say the other ones are going to burn forever. You know that all religions don't say the same thing because there are wars fought over this, right? That's not the case. Religions say different things. That's okay. Because that's how we grow. And in fact, it's a dangerous thing to say because sometimes people say, not us, but I've heard other people say, well, you know those things that you've been doing for thousands of years. If you just did your thing right, you'd realize the thing that I've known all along. Ooh, it's a little colonialist, in fact. That's not great, and it's not cool. Because the thing is, if I don't see other people, if I don't see other belief systems, all I get is my own version of it. You ever been mad at somebody for something they did in a dream? Yeah. Well, you didn't do it. It was my version of you. And if all I see is my version of you, there's no room for that fight to end. There's no room for the growing to happen. Here's the thing. People say different things. That's how we know how to heal and grow and learn. Religions say different things, and if we can appreciate the difference, we can stop worrying about where it came from and worshiping the provenance of an idea, and we can instead start focusing on what works. And that's when the wall comes down. That's when we grow. And the wall coming down is a very important thing. I think that it's a tricky thing to face things that can be negative or upsetting or different or challenging. You ever had somebody cry in front of you? You ever heard him say, I'm sorry? You ever apologize for feeling sad or mad? People do that. It happens. I think sometimes in our culture we're taught that that's something that you don't share with other people. You're supposed to be cool all the time, right? You don't have that experience. You don't have that negativity. So if you cry, you messed up somehow. If I have any authority at all, I know it isn't that kind of church, but I have any authority at all, I want you to stop doing that. Because it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to be frustrated because that's the beginning of growth. Sometimes, look, I'm not telling you to go looking for trouble, to go looking for heartache. But I am telling you that sometimes the hurt is good. And the tears are good because they tell you you're out of the cave. You know, you're really living your life, you know. It's okay. And you're not alone. Everybody goes through it. But let me put that another way. If I shut off my ability to feel sad, to feel mad, to feel the so-called negative emotions, I also shut off my ability to help somebody else who's feeling those things. And we're here to help. We are here to learn. And how do you learn? Do you learn by just having the same things repeated to you over and over again, the things that you're comfortable with, the things that you're okay with? Is that learning? It's Disney World. It's fun for a while, but you can only hear It's a Small World so many times before you go nuts. We don't need to be protected. We're tougher than that. You and I learn by being exposed to something different. Learning and growth happens in two very specific ways, either through experience, by going out there in the world, or by intentional exposure to the transcendent. Either by experience or by intentional exposure to the transcendent. That's what prayer, for example, is supposed to be. Is your prayer just saying the same words over and over again, or are you just trying to get a glimpse of something bigger than you? One works, one doesn't. What can you do to get out in front of something bigger than you? What I'm talking about is disruption. What can you do to disrupt things in your life? I once read a book by a prison guard. Riveting reading. One of the things that the prison guard said is they teach us very early on that if the inmates are fighting, you can't just get in there and try to break it up because somebody's going to get hurt. It's a negative thing to do. You don't do that. But instead, what you need to do is distract them. So if you have two inmates fighting, you'll say something like, "Did you leave the TV on?" What? And then you can get in and separate people and make them safe. Disruption, changing the subject, looking at the thing that is an interruption is a very, very healing thing to do. When you think about any innovator, Steve Jobs, for example, when you think about an innovator, somebody that changed something, they looked at the world and said, "This is messed up. Let's disrupt that and fix that." That's where success happens. That's where innovation happens. That's where healing happens. That's where love happens. Love is a major disruption. It's super inconvenient. One of my favorite songs is a song that a guy wrote for his newborn little girl, and it's called "You Ruined Everything in the Nicest Possible Way." But that's what we want. And I think about my life, and maybe you think about your life too. And there have been some things that I have really, really been heartbroken over. There have been some things that I really just didn't even understand, that just really shook me to my core, and yet here I am. And I realize now that those things taught me something big, something small, something to do, something to quit doing. That's how growth happens. I am so grateful for the moments of disruption, because it's all part of the experience. And when we learn to face those things, we learn how to grow. One of the big disruptions in the world of environmental studies happened not so long ago. Do you remember? I'm a child of the 70s, so I remember people littering. It used to happen all the time. But one of the things that people said was, we realize now that when you throw something away, there's no away. If it's all one world, when you throw something away, there's no away. It goes somewhere. It's not magic, right? And when people started to understand that this thing, the gum wrapper or whatever that I'm done with, it still has to be dealt with just because it's not mine anymore. Well, people started to care in a different way, and things started to change. And obviously, we've got a lot more to do. I'm not saying that. But I am saying the basic concept that there's no such thing as a way really changed things. Well, why am I telling you that? Yes, I would like you to give a hoot and also to not pollute. But the bigger concept here is I want you to know metaphysically, spiritually, psychologically, interpersonally, any other way, there is no such thing as a way. There is just your life. All of it. And there are things that maybe we don't want to face that probably need the most attention. And when we realize that we can incorporate all of it and grow through it and learn through it and get done with it, instead of hiding it in the closet, something really amazing starts to happen. There's an old folk tale of a farmer whose ox died. And he needed that ox to plow the fields, to feed his family, to be a part of the community, the whole thing. And the ox died. And it was such a big deal. It's not like he's a big industrial farmer. This isn't Yellowstone. This is one ox, one farmer, one farm. This is the whole life. That ox was almost like a part of the family, you know? So much so that the farmer could not deal with it. Even though the ox was clearly dead, the farmer said, oh no, he's just sick. I just got to find the right cure. And then things will just get back to what we're comfortable with. Things will just get back to normal. And all of his farmer friends in the village said, you've got to deal with this. This is not going to get better. You've got to face the problem. Wouldn't hear it, and wouldn't hear it, and wouldn't hear it. I can't imagine what that's like, but wouldn't hear it. And then finally the farmer went to the leader of the community, to the tribe leader. And she said to the farmer, I do have a cure for you. I want you to go to a household that has never seen death and get one mustard seed from them and bring it back to me and I'll make you a cure. Well, the farmer went from one household to the other, and every time he went to a household, he would say, have you seen death? Have you seen adversity? Have you seen problems? And of course they have, because everybody has. And they had a story, and the farmer had to hear that story and realize that, oh, wait, same but different. And the farmer would go to another house and hear their story and realize, oh, wait, same but different. We're all going through something together. And after a while, the farmer realized what we all knew the whole time. It's okay, because you're not alone. And nothing gets better until you face whatever it is that's going on. It's a beautiful thing to understand that all of the differences are part of the journey that you and I are on together. And together is the important word. I think that sometimes people think, you know, I'm reading all of these books and I'm practicing these things and I'm doing the affirmations and I'm taking the classes and I know that I'm supposed to be some kind of a rock star, some kind of a super prosperous healing presence, and I'm supposed to be at the head of the pinnacle of evolution, and I'm supposed to be the superhero of this because I've read all these books about affirmation and I'm good enough and I'm smart enough and gosh darn it, people like me. Oh, that's a lot. Especially when your heart isn't in it yet. If it doesn't feel true, it's not going to come true. You got to start with what feels true, and we've talked about that before. But look, maybe the noblest thing that you can do, instead of being some kind of rock star, superhero, whatever, maybe the noblest thing that you can do is look at the things in your life that have been unpleasant and let them stop with you. The trauma that you had in childhood, the bad things that you might be carrying around at 3 a.m. when nobody else is awake in the house and you're thinking about that thing I said in second grade. Or whatever. Big or small. Maybe the noblest thing you can do is say, you know what, the chain ends with me. I'm actually going to face this and I'm not passing it on to somebody else to deal with my emotional garbage. Because there's no way. Maybe the best thing you can do is face it. Not alone, because you're not alone. But just face it. Things happen. We go through sad times and mad times and upset times and every other kind of times. But all of it, when you let it, when you dance with it, combines to make something beautiful, something wonderful, something capable, and something free. Because after all, freedom is a choice. Thank you very much.